Namaste, sir.
Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
So the morning we stopped at a time when we just wanted to understand very clearly that any knowledge system has utility and will survive for long only if we are going to show demonstrated excellence, and we will look at that because the focus is on IKS now. We had a brief on IKS and other knowledge systems. It's very clear that all knowledge systems are built on native indigenous knowledge system developed locally across continents and cultures. Consolidation, maturity to codified knowledge systems happened upon settled culture. That is when urbanization set in and kingdoms and empires got built. Okay. The churn in various knowledge systems were also strongly driven by institutionalized religions, culminating in colonial era where the Western knowledge system has emerged most proliferated. The Western knowledge system was greatly aided by science and technology of the kind that emerged post-Renaissance period. It's very important to understand what is the IKS contribution to the Renaissance in Southern Europe, which allowed them to develop the current version of the Western knowledge system, which dominates the world. Okay. So outline, we'll see basically why do knowledge system thrive and or are popular. Why does Western knowledge system dominate now and what are its historical roots? Excellence in through knowledge system does indeed endorse its acceptance, any knowledge system. Comfort and quality of life, the tenets or components of knowledge system provide to its people through cultural expressions, seems to endorse its popularity and growth. Okay. So why is it that people, everybody wants to migrate to America legally or illegally? In fact, more illegally than legally. It is a sense that life is more comfortable there. Okay. Why is it that many who come to migrate from North India come to Bangalore, Karnataka, and they're wonderstruck saying, "Oh, it is so nice here." Okay. So that's really what is this quality of life and comfort. That's exactly what captures the effectiveness of a knowledge system. It's also quite common to see cases of imposed knowledge system which has neither of the above, that is neither comfort nor quality of life. We have seen this with ISIS, Taliban, Boko Haram, North Korea, what is happening in Golden Triangle across the Burma border there. All these are, and they're numerous both in history now and in future also. So the question is, will any knowledge system finally bring peace, prosperity, and happiness to all, which seems to be the very idea of codifying and practicing a knowledge system. So the very final goal of every knowledge system is to bring to its believers, followers, and proponents through its tenets, attributes, and components a sense of peace, prosperity, and happiness to all who may live by with it and those around who may not subscribe to it. Why should this is very important. This is the only unique feature in Indian knowledge system where even if you don't subscribe to it, you have the common well-being that is allowed with people who share it, which you don't find in any other knowledge system. This is broadly achieved by its excellence, utility, justice, equity, quality, and equality. So every knowledge system should demonstrate this. Okay. Now, each of these needs an elaborate debate and discussion by, for the moment, we shall look only at excellence, which is indeed a hallmark of quality of any knowledge system. I am sure there are other sessions which look at other things, and it's quite exhaustive. It's not possible to cover everything even in a week or 10 days. But we'll just look at excellence, which seems to be the number one criteria for value or acceptance. Okay. Before we look at excellence in Indian knowledge system, we will also see why the Western knowledge system has so much success. There are four factors that has led to the dominance of the Western knowledge system. The Greco-Roman basis for modern science, technology, and philosophy, that state sponsorship of Christian philosophy or worldview, followed and aided by wars and colonization, which was extremely brutal and violent. For us, let me tell you, if you look at colonial expressions, Jallianwala Bagh massacre in India is nothing compared to the things that happened in Africa and in South America. Okay, the maturity, expansion, and depth provided to modern science and technology through Renaissance period, which is basically dominance of the reductionist hypothesis, and development and manufacture of numerous gadgets, services in field of manufacturing, finance, healthcare, and communication during the last 300 years. So this post-industrial revolution strengthened the Western knowledge system. Okay. So the roots of it happens to be the Greek school, basically Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates. So the Plato's idea of governance and republic, Aristotle in philosophy, okay, of logic, and Socrates, who was also teacher to Aristotle and Socrates, both were teachers and contemporaries of Alexander. Uh, and the logic which you find in legal tenets, the logic which you do use in transactions, all that has these roots here. Okay. There were other logic. We had other logic both in China, India, but particular Aristotle logic found wide application acceptance in science and technology. The other thing which influenced a lot is the mathematics. For example, the Euclid's book. The whole of 15 books in one. There was a 16th book which is lost. So this is, so even today, 90% of the geometry in the world is Euclidean geometry, which we use, okay, which we teach. Eventually, post and during Renaissance period, people like Newton, who shaped both physics and maths, Euler, and so many others who contributed to the consolidation of mathematics and physics, uh, including Euler in. Eventually, by 19th century, you see the following. There were a lot of devices to mathematical ideas, explaining working of devices and gadgets using physics, chemistry, biology, etc. Explaining earthly and cosmic physical phenomena in mathematical terms. Using mathematics, statistics, probability to explain, infer, manipulate, to obtain new ideas, explanation like radar, anti-aircraft guns, all that. You'll see here in 19th century, this was the First World War, where soldiers were there on the time. But this is in Iraq war, where the war is being fought in Iraq, but the driver of the tank is in Texas in a air-conditioned room. So this is one thing. Similarly here, this is the first X-ray by William Röntgen. But today you see the consequence in 100 years. This is a surgeon who is doing surgery, but the patient is here. Okay, so remote robot assisted surgery, everything has come. This is the gadgets and the comfort of life provided by Western science seems to be the single biggest factor which allowed them to dominate. And of course, you can see how mathematics got converted to something like a CT scanner. Okay. And the mathematics converted things into internet. These are the four founders of internet. And early 20 years before them, this fellow initiated the idea of internet. Okay. So today, when children are born, the umbilical cord is cut, but as soon as they are taken to the ward, a new umbilical cord, which is either wired or wireless, which is the internet, is connected. Okay. So this is like what is happening today. And including not only creating COVID virus, but also using mathematics to and statistics to finally what we now call artificial intelligence and machine learning to actually make the COVID vaccine. See, 6 or 7 countries made COVID vaccine in 1 year after COVID. Okay. And India also did two different versions. So this is what is happening to modern science, and which simply says the most compelling reason for Western science, Western knowledge system to dominate and become popular seems to be this. But as we have already remarked, we are coming closer to the saturation point of Western knowledge system. And from now on, there are more minus than plus. The other thing the Western knowledge system does is even going back billions of years. Modern science has the capacity to both look forward and backward, either on a microscopic scale or a cosmic scale. So you have electron microscopes and space telescope, outside the body and inside too. Send people inside Earth, under the sea, and to moon. They have also caused irreparable damage, caused climate issues, and have been responsible for more collateral damage than even World War II. There is more wealth now, but there is also more inequality. It also created the COVID-19 virus. Because today, like your DTP operation on Microsoft Word, Control C, Control V, you have tools called CRISPR tools, which does Control C, Control V on genetic data, genetic information. So this is exactly how COVID-19 virus was manufactured. Okay. Everyone knows how the universe started. It started with a big bang. Okay. So after 1000 million years, it's like this. Today, about 1.5 billion years later, that we have this situation. Okay. These are you see 10 to the power minus 43 seconds, and the temperature is 10 to the power 32 degrees. Okay. This is 3 degree Kelvin. This is the point where two scientists called Penzias and Wilson proved that if Big Bang had happened 1.5 billion years back, today the background radiation would be at a temperature equivalent to 3 degrees. That's how the proof of the Big Bang happened. Okay. And they got the Nobel Prize in physics. But what's interesting is it was proved that Big Bang started the universe and etc. etc. Now the question was, what is before the Big Bang? So you have a Big Bang, it expands, then there is a big crunch, and like a tennis ball bouncing, again this another Big Bang will lead to another big crunch. So this cyclic nature is still not fully proven, but it's the most promising model. And in a few cases, it has been shown that it is part of the big cycle. Big Bang, then big crunch, again Big Bang, so on and so forth. But what's interesting is this. One of the first excellent things the Indian knowledge system did was the following. You look at many eminent scientists, Carl Sagan, Niels Bohr, Oppenheimer, Schrodinger, Heisenberg, everybody, recently Roger Penrose, they have explicitly stated that Indian or Hindu knowledge system is the only system that has correctly identified cyclic nature, that is big bangs followed by big crunch of the universe and its time scale correctly in scales of billions of years. So almost 1000 years before the Western knowledge system identified cyclic nature and time scale of universe, Indian knowledge system had identified it correctly. It had not measured it scientifically in modern terms with instruments like Large Hadron Collider, LIGO Observatory, James Webb Telescope, etc. So without that, they had hypothesized and come to a conclusion that the whole universe operates in a cyclic nature. The next part of excellence obviously is architecture. Architectures have been symbols of different knowledge systems, starting from Babylonia, Egypt and China, Greece and Rome and South America. This is the remnants of what appears to be the Hanging Gardens of Babylonia. This is the temple of Abu Simbel in Egypt, which looked very colorful when it started. 1200 BC. Today it looks like this. This is the Great Wall of China. This is the architecture of Rome, Greece. Splendid architecture. This is the architecture to Rome. There are other Colosseums and others, but the Roman aqueduct seems to be one of the most important things simply because they were the first to handle large scale shifting of water and stuff like that. And this, for many of you may not be aware, this is a remote place in South American Andes Mountains called Machu Picchu, which is an amazing civilization. I'm sure it had its own knowledge system. It simply disappeared. We have no idea why it collapsed or why it disappeared. And all these have disappeared today. Of course, some influence of these two remain. There's hardly any influence of this, very little influence of this, nothing about this. But correspondingly, look at the architecture based on the Indian knowledge system. These are the Ajanta caves. Okay, these are the Ajanta caves. And close up of the caves. The inside of the caves in 3 stages between 550 to 600 BC, current era, AD that is. Another phase between 600 and 730, and the third phase between 730 to 950 current era, because different rulers with different. What is interesting is even though there were 3 different groups of rulers with different outlook, all of them continuously improved and added to it. They did not destroy it. They did not knock it down. So this is the greatness of Indian knowledge system, where something that is good is improved. It's only other knowledge system we try to break because either they are ashamed that they can't do it, or they don't want others to know that there was something very nice, which is one of the dirtiest things about the Abrahamic knowledge system. Even more impressive, the Kailasnath temple in Ellora. You can see this is a hillock. The temple has been cut from the hillock. And what is more interesting is probably one of the most impressive architecture in the world. This architecture, Kailasnath temple in Ellora, is much better than any of these because it is very rare. It is grand. It is big. You can see here, the entire temple is built on a foundation on which elephants are carved, over which the temple rests. And here it is, look at the relative size, unbelievable. The size is so big, the scale very large, and the style is unique because it's one of the very few architectures in the world where it was carved upside down. From the top, it was carved to the bottom. Okay. Normally, you place boulders and finish stone slabs one by one, like what happens in Hoysala temple, and build it from bottom to up. But this is just the reverse, from top to bottom and a single stone. Unbelievable. There is, I don't think there is any architecture better than this in the world in terms of size, scale, complexity, and of course, these are very big. The Egyptian monuments are very big, but it cannot be challenged. This is one of the probably one of the greatest pieces of architecture. Of course, you can call it great only if you understand the Indian knowledge system. Because, for example, somebody is very great as a leader. For example, Churchill was a prime minister of England. He's a very great person there. But for us, he's not very great simply because he had ordered Mahatma Gandhi to be starved to death in the Yarwada jail when he was the prime minister of England. So he's basically a murderer, a butcher. But he's a big hero there. So it's very important to understand that understanding and judgment is also conditional to the kind of knowledge systems you use. But nevertheless, on a scale as these are impressive by any knowledge system, this is far more impressive. I wish some of you actually make an effort to go see it. Okay. And also interesting, the whole of these has staircases to go up, and on the staircase, the entire Ramayana and Mahabharata have been inscribed. Okay, so amazing. The entire story is available on the panels that have the staircase. You can see here there is a staircase which is going up. Same here on the left to right. It continues. This is in 756 current era, and it continues. You have amazing. Look at this panel of Bhoganandeshwara. It's an example of Hoysala architecture. Of course, one of the world's most interesting and challenging building is the Brihadeshwara temple. But it continues, and this is up to late 18th century. This palace many people miss. This is a very interesting palace called Padmanabhapura Palace. It's a wooden palace belonging to Kerala, but geographically located within Tamil Nadu. It's the second biggest wooden palace in the world. The first one, of course, is in Tokyo, the Imperial Palace of Japan. But unbelievable, people miss this. These are all very standard tourist places, but this is something very interesting. Okay, and it continues all the way till 17th century. Hampi. Okay, of course, a lot of it was destroyed, but what remains is unparalleled. Okay. The third point of excellence is mathematics. Like Greeks, Mesopotamians, Chinese, Egyptians, Indians too had a lot of original mathematics, including the most important of contribution, the zero, the Hindu numeral zero, even though they call it Arabic. It is wrongly called Arabic numeral system, which was just a copy in Persian of the Indian numerical system. This copy translate also worked in other disciplines of knowledge, eventually assisted for the Renaissance to happen in Southern Europe. Only in Italy, and it took another 200 years for the effect of Renaissance in Italy to move northwards, and finally England, which we are. And you can see here, this is the work of Indian mathematics during the period 200 BC to 400 current era. This is found in a village called Bakshali, which is now in Pakistan. Okay. And this is the document. This document is in, I think, Cambridge or Oxford University Museum. Okay. And that says about the sale of horse. There are two types of horses and one camel. So in a animal fair, they were exchanging. So they're saying how many camels can be obtained for one type of horse. What about the other type of horse? What is the price of each horse? This is eventually an algebra. So it's an algebraic problem so Indians were very good at algebra. Okay. Not only numbers, algebra, and they also did geometry. Okay. So very early algebra. Not surprising. You can see here, what we use in computers today, the binary notation, was done by Pingala somewhere in 200 BC. Okay. Of course, he did not use 1 and 0, but he used something equivalent to what is now a Morse code, short and long. So Morse code is dot and dash. Here you had a short dash and a long dash. He also built what is now known as Pascal's triangle for 1500 years before Pascal. And by 800 current era, we already had the Fibonacci series. Okay. The sequence was first described by Viranka in 700 AD. Okay. As an outgrowth of the earlier writings on Sanskrit prosody by Pingala. Okay. He also used 0, but not, so he used light, lagu and heavy rather than 0 and 1 to describe. About 1900 years later, in 1703, Leibniz makes this binary, which today all computers use. Okay. Similarly, Brahmagupta did many interesting things, including arithmetic and geometric series. He was first to use 0 as a number. He gave rules for both negative numbers, and he is the first one to show the rule that negative into negative is equal to positive. Okay. So this is almost 1000 years before the Europeans will do it. Even more interesting is Bhaskaracharya. He was also an astronomer, wrote many interesting books, one of which is Leelavati. His daughter's name is also Leelavati, corrected Earth. arithmetic, algebra, study of planets, and study of spheres, which is basically spherical geometry. And he had what is today now known as composite angles for sine and cosine. He had already done it in the period 1114 AD to 1185. Islamic or Arabic or Persian translation of Lilavati happened in 1587. This is one reason why the Renaissance people, see, directly from Sanskrit to Latin did not happen. Sanskrit to Persian happened. Persian to Latin happened. And Latin to English and German happened later. Okay. You will see this reason why it happened. And a very interesting deviation. A very famous traveler called Ibn Battuta, who had traveled quite extensively in the world and in India. But what's most interesting is he was in Tunis, in Morocco, and you can see Morocco has a close proximity to Italy. Whereas traders from Morocco were reaching India for over 2,500 years back, even before the Europeans. Why I'm saying is, in the duration of the trade, a lot of interesting material from Sanskrit to Persian. Persian was available here in North Africa, which was very easily accessed by people, translated to Latin, and it helped. I'll come to that proof later. You can see here. See, one of the key persons for Renaissance in Europe is Fibonacci. But what is interesting is, he was born in Italy and ended in Italy. He spent his younger years in North Africa. He was here in Tunis and Morocco. His father was a trader and a traveler. So he spent a lot of his younger years here learning Persian mathematics, which was Sanskrit mathematics expressed in Persian. And from there, he took it to Europe. And in fact, the main person for Renaissance, whether it is Newton or Galileo, they all refer to Fibonacci. And such things have happened. For example, if you look at the Kerala School of Mathematics, this Madhava of Sangam Grama, he had a family of school of mathematics starting in 1380, going all the way up to 1621. Well documented. And his work eventually inspired and motivated both Newton and Leibniz to discover calculus, which is the central point of mathematical and physics revolution in Europe. And there is a nice two-piece documentary in BBC on Kerala School of Mathematics and how Newton and Leibniz got all the correct information and details from Madhava's work. Okay. This is it. You see, there was a nice seminar for a few weeks on the man who invented calculus, the life and work of Madhava. This is by Professor Divakaran, retired from TFR. And you can see here, this is the Brahmi script. Then the Hindu numeral, it already came to 0. Then it progressed. And today you will see this Arabic numeral, whatever you call it. This is the Persian Arabic translations of this. Okay. This is the book, direct copy of the book, which Fibonacci's handwriting in Latin. And there he mentions this Hindu numerals and other things. Okay. And that culture continues. For example, this is a house in Kumbakonam where Srinivas Ramanujam, one of the world's greatest mathematicians of all times, sat on this veranda here outside and did all his work. This is the Srinivas Ramanujam, and he had only one notebook where he could write the answers. Since it was very expensive for him to buy white sheets, beautiful. See what he wrote here in his handwriting. It looks so nice when it is put on the computer. Finally, there are 5 books. It's called the Lost Notebooks, produced by Bruce Brent in Chicago University. He has spent 40 years taking down his notebook, which is about 40 or 60 pages, and everything you see here, 10, 11, 12, each of it is a problem and the right hand side is a solution. So there is a myth that he perhaps did not solve, but he clearly said Ramanujan would do most of his work and perhaps his proof on slate and then transfer just the results to paper. Okay. Because since paper was very expensive, he was very poor. And it's also fine when he came to Madras, Brent from University of Illinois in Chicago. He gave a lecture in IIT Madras. He said over the last 40 years that he has worked, nearly all of Ramanujan's theorems have been proved right. More interesting, also mathematicians agreed on the point that it was not possible for someone to imagine those results without either solving or proving. It was so strange, that's it. Okay, so one of the world's greatest mathematician and a culture of mathematics, which unfortunately is being destroyed now in the country, we have to recognize that. The next aspect of excellence is work of skill. Work of skill and metals, clothing, pottery, carpentry, agriculture, water management, everything. We can't cover everything in detail. Very special mention of surgery, particularly plastic surgery. This was done in 800 BC at Varanasi. He wrote the book Sushruta Samhita, a treatise on surgery, and the surgical tools which is sketched in his book. These are the tools, and many similar tools are used today in surgery. Just imagine this is approximately 3,000 years back that they were doing plastic surgery. And it's very interesting how the plastic surgery went from Bombay to England. This is a bullock cart operator who participated in the first or the second Mysore war with British, and he was captured and his nose was cut. So those days, prisoners who had to be released, their nose would be cut and sent. And very interesting, he went back to Bombay, and in 1794, he found someone who could restore his nose. See, the nose is cut here. And this was published in the Gentleman's Magazine in London in 1794 by two Britishers who saw this. And then they remarked that this culture of doing plastic surgery was very common in India. And 15th of July, every July 15th, it started in 2020, where it's called World Plastic Surgery Day in honor of Sushruta. And plastic surgery is more advanced than regular routine surgery, which was also being done because those days surgery was done because there were a lot of fights and wars and people breaking bones, cutting, and all that was common. Even though major wars were yet to come, maybe even earlier there were such things. So, and very interesting contribution, one of the most interesting contribution. And about metallurgy, as we know, that this pillar, so-called the iron pillar in Delhi, built by Chandragupta II in 375 to 450 AD, has not rusted even today. So, and it's also interesting that there's a famous nomenclature called the sword of Damascus. Damascus used to make finest swords in Europe or Mid East. And what is interesting is all the raw material for the sword was going from India. It was called the wood steel. Okay, they would only melt it once more, or forge it into steel blades. And also this is interesting. This is the Ashoka pillar, one of the Ashoka pillars, which was put in Ambala in 300 BC, but shifted to Delhi by Tughlaq. Okay. So this is the kind of excellence that we had. And the fifth story of excellence is about one of the oldest books of political economy and public administration. perhaps the first book which was truly interdisciplinary. So you had politics, economics, political administration, etc. It was also the first book of management and statecraft, written by the foremost of practitioner. So he was not any student or researcher. He was the first practitioner, and on a scale of global levels. That's how important this book is. Valid even today, more so, and it's prescribed world over, maybe not in Mysore University and other places. Okay. So this is the book called Kautilya's Arthashastra. It's a Penguin Classics. And what is interesting is Mysore has a link where in 1905 in the Oriental Research Laboratory, Oriental Research Institute in Mysore, the librarian then discovered this manuscript, which was probably the fourth or the fifth copy. So they would copy every 200 or 200 years, they would copy once. So it's an amazing discovery that Mysore provided. It's a great book, no doubt about it. And just imagine almost 2,500 years back, such an important book was written. And the next excellence is even better. One of the oldest book of grammar, done so well 2,500 years back that it cannot be improved anymore. It is that perfect. It's a complete grammar of all languages that are possible. It is interestingly for those who talk so much about computers that it is critical in developing what is called the Backus-Naur form, which is the foundation for all context-free grammar in programming languages. Okay, this already had it. Noting better in nothing, there's a spelling mistake. It should be nothing better in any intellectual work in the history of. So the world's greatest intellectual work ever done is this work. This is the Paninian Ashtyaadi in 8 volumes, done in Gandhara, which is today Kandahar. And you can see what happens when knowledge system change. 2,500 years back, Gandhara was intellectual capital of the world. Today, the new name called Kandahar. Today, it is Kandahar is the world's terrorist capital. Okay, so that's what happens when knowledge systems change. And there was an interesting PhD thesis in 2014 or 16 done by an Indian in University of Cambridge. The title of the thesis was "In Panini We Trust: Discovering the Algorithm for Rule Conflict Resolution in the Ashtyaadi." So it's such fine work, and you can see here he is termed the father of linguistics. The history of linguistics begins not with Plato or Aristotle, but with the Indian grammarian Panini. And the greatest linguist of antiquity, Panini, was the greatest linguist of antiquity and deserves to be treated as such. This is Stahl. And you can see that this is where he lived very close. This is the Taxila University. This is the birch bark rendering of Ashtyaadi. And we also they had Aristotelian logic. We had logic from 4th century BC by Panini, then Patanjali, all the way till 18th century. So the Indian logic system is far more evolved and developed, and it has greater variety than the Western logic system. Okay. And very interesting, you see here, it has, this Ashtyaadi has 3,959 sutras for the perfect grammar in any language. The world's greatest linguist called Bloomfield, American linguist, called it the greatest monument of human intelligence. And currently, world's greatest linguist is Dr. Noam Chomsky in MIT in US. But he had something very interesting to say. I did not hear it from him, but he told to my friend who was a student, he said, you are from India, why do you want to come to MIT and study linguistics? You know Panini. What Panini did 2,500 years back, our department in Massachusetts for 100 years put together cannot do 1/10 of what he did. So don't come and waste your time here is what he told. So that's In fact, it's the world's greatest intellectual work because till Panini did his grammar, nobody in the world knew whether they were speaking and writing properly. They did not know what to correct if it was wrong. So they neither knew whether it was right or wrong. And if it was wrong, they didn't know what to correct. And if it was right, they didn't know why it was right. So this is probably the greatest intellectual work in the history of time. It far outbeats Einstein's special theory of relativity also. Okay. And there are other excellence, something that is independent of any knowledge system, independent of even reading, writing skills, universal good, and one of the most important to human life everywhere. It's a preventive medicine and a significant therapeutic value. Only a fool will not value this. The greatest good done to human well-being from any knowledge system, well-being at zero cost, no collateral damage, no institutional dogmas. Now it is the best brand from Indian knowledge system the world over. It is yoga. So this is Patanjali's 200 BC Mahabhashya and Yoga Sutras, the pranayama and asanas. So these are three main things. There are others also. So this is at least 4,000 years old meditation and pranayama developed here in our socio-economic geographical context. And what's more interesting is it had, because of the Islamic rule and the British dominance, this had faded into background and very interesting. In fact, I think the world's best place for Indian knowledge system is Mysore, because not only we discovered Chanakya's Arthashastra, this Hatha Yoga was revived in Mysore. The most important proponent is actually B.K. Iyengar, which you see here. But what is more interesting is his guru is the one who restored it. He was Krishnamacharya at the Parkal Mata here. He traveled all the way. He spent 7 years. You see, for those of you who go to Manasarovar, Kailas, that's a routine thing, but very few actually go near Kailas. At the foothills of Kailas, there are caves. This is called the inner parikrama, which very few are allowed to do and very few can do. So there are caves at the foot of Kailas mountain, and there were excellent teachers who had not been disturbed by the Islamic rule or the British rule. They had preserved the original Hatha Yoga with a small modification into the Tibetan form. He spent 4.5 or 7 years there learning all that, came back to Mysore, started the yoga school, and today, see who practices yoga. This is Tendulkar and his family every day morning doing yoga. Okay, so it's probably the greatest contribution to well-being. It's a preventive medicine. And preventive medicine is superior to curative medicine. Curative medicine is after you fall sick. You spend money, go to doctors, all that. This is preventing going to doctor and preventing going to taking medicine. Amazing. I don't think there's anything better in any knowledge system in the world, this and grammar. And not to forget, we have very bad idea that, you see, of course, we have exceedingly bad universities and colleges now. Let me tell you, I have been in Indian Institute of Science, I have been in Indian Institute of Technology, I have been in Indian Institute of Management, everywhere. We have some of the world's largest education system, but one of the world's worst education system is in India, including higher education. Okay, but that was not the case. Contrary to most common perception, Indian subcontinent indeed had the first, largest, and the most widespread formal education in campuses. Equity, apart from quality and relevance, teaching what was needed in the contemporary society was practiced. Very important about equity, meaning we keep hearing stories that Krishna and Sudama went to ashram to learn. Rama was sent to some ashram to learn. Gurukula, all this. And you also almost always frequently hear that they were all prince and royal families. Of course, Sudama was a poor, from a very poor family, which means the following. How were poor people given quality education there? It's very interesting because they had what is called the earn while you learn scheme. Every Gurukula had poor students who could not afford to pay Guru Dakshina later. But what they did was interesting. Morning till evening, they would work in the ashram, and evening, the teacher would repeat the lessons for all those who had worked. Whereas the children from royal family and aristocracy, they were not working in the Gurukula. Okay, so nobody who wanted to learn was denied unless they were proved to be insincere and not interested. Everybody who was interested in learning well had an opportunity for quality education. It grew till 12th century and slowly declined and disappeared because of Arabic knowledge system. And after that, okay, you see here 1916 again, almost after 2000 years, Banaras Hindu University, the first university established again by Indian. The first in Western world was University of Bologna in 12th century, Oxford in 13th century, Harvard in 17th century. Whereas our first university was, you see here, when the men of Alexander the Great came to Taxila in India, in the 4th century BC, they found a university the like of which had not been seen in Greece, a university which taught the 3 Vedas and the 18th accomplishment, and was still existing when the Chinese pilgrim Fa Hian went there in 400 AD. Even though he had already familiar with Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates, Alexander was mesmerized by the university in Taxila. And the Taxila University had courses of Arthashastra and Panini. Please remember that. Okay. Not one, but many. See, Skandanad, Ratnagiri University, Vikramshila, Jagadale, Pushpagiri, Odantapuri, Somapuri, Vallabh University, Taxila, Nalanda, Bikrampur University, everything was there. India was the only country to have university education in ancient times. The reason why they were all shattered by the invaders. Okay. You see here, today we are struggling hard for admission. 2007, which is now unfortunately near what is Islamabad. Over 10,500 students from 16 countries studied 64 disciplines of higher education taught by scholars like Panini. This is how the Taxila University was. Okay. So the Indian knowledge system had very interesting capability. Many times it was not organized, and over a few thousand years, the role of technology was not introduced. One man understood this very well. He is a Korean who simply studied the local Gujarati woman doing milk farming and milk business. And he said this can be world class if only it is organized and some modern technology introduced. This is really what it is. See, you changed the lives of 15 million farmer families. You revolutionized. You gave India 200 Amul bands. This was his 90th birthday. And look at this. Good management with farmer power. Good management gives this power the right direction and thrust. Nothing can stop the farmers then, least of all the MNCs. Today it is a $3 billion revenue. And the most popular brand from India is Amul. Okay. So you will see why the Western knowledge system seems to dominate. It's a very interesting photo. In 1927, this is a Solvay conference. And all people had to come on their own, voluntarily to come and meet at one place to discuss changes in science and technology. And you can see here, these are 29 people, 17 of whom were already Nobel laureates. And out of the remaining 12, 9 would get Nobel Prize later. This is probably the greatest collection of intellectuals at one point. Uh, we fail to do this. We fail to sit together, talk. Today, you don't do that. Even in department, there is more fight than talking. And if there is talking, it has nothing to do with academic. You come to Mysore University, go to any department, just hear what they talk. Where is the site? Which fellow got DA hike? What to do? Only transaction is happening. So please remember, when we are spoiling our own knowledge system, it is not somebody else external, like it happened with when the Bhaktiar Khilji went and destroyed and set fire to Nalanda, but we are doing it ourselves now. In fact, one place where you don't learn anything in India is Indian education system. You really don't learn anything. Nothing new, nothing interesting. It's a torture and everybody is miserable. Everybody is complaining, which means it's a system which has to change or go. Okay. And all the knowledge systems over the world, you just see here, look at this. Has the world truly changed with various knowledge systems? You look at that. What do the poor do? Work and work, struggle and work. What do the rich do? Exploit the poor. What does the soldier do? Protects both. What does the taxpayer do? Pays for all three of them, soldier, rich, and poor. What does the banker do? Robs all four. What does the lawyer do? Misleads all five. What does the doctor do? Bills all six. What do the goons do? Scare all of the seven. What does the politician do? Lives happily on account of all eight. This is really what it is. Okay. Today's situation is no different, but what is surprising is this is a statement made by Cicero in 43 BC in Rome. So finally, however good a knowledge system is, however good things are, if we don't learn to use and behave well, all this has no meaning. Okay. And today's, thanks to Western knowledge system, there's too much of problem today. See, we live in a strange world where the poor walk miles to get food and the rich walk miles to digest the food. These are problems of prosperity. These are problems of poverty. And you see that in Bangalore. You go to any park in the evening, all of them are people who are sitting in air conditioned room, earning, making their money. They may work, they may not work. I don't care, but evening they come to the park to digest what they have eaten so that they can go back and have another food session in dinner. Most of them cannot digest what they have eaten because they really don't work the way it needs to be. So this is the problem with modern society. And there is a strong push for Indian knowledge system in NEP. As I said, implementation is very difficult. The problem with using IKS in education is, what is the employability factor for such courses? How many students are willing to take up courses this? It may increase additional burden to what we have about the Western knowledge system. And over and above that, there's an acute shortage of trained faculty in Indian knowledge system. So Indian knowledge system is quite, it's a very holistic picture, and we are born, bred, and trained and tutored to think in a fragmented manner. That's one reason why we find understanding IKS difficult. And there are many references. Don't bother. If you really want to be serious in this, one reference with which you can get started is this famous book called Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. It's the world's most popular and useful book. As I speak today, 23 million copies have been sold in 65 different languages. It's the most impressive book in the last 25 years. And it's very interesting because this is a Westerner who has written, but he is more Indian than any of us because he's a follower of Goenka school of philosophy, yoga and meditation. He comes to Igatpuri every year for 2 months. And for the last 20 years, he has been coming to Igatpuri in near Nasik in Maharashtra. And It's probably because of his meditation, yoga, and the system of Indian knowledge thinking that he ingrained. He's basically a Jew from Israel. He has been able to write one of the most influential books. And if you can get started with this, it will motivate you to learn things better, and even learn IKS better. Okay. Now I will stop. I will open the uh, topics for discussion, and we have another 15 minutes time. Please feel free to ask questions.
Good afternoon, sir.
Ah.
Myself, Dr. Surma from KSOU Psychology Department. Sir, it was an excellent introduction towards Indian knowledge system. You explained about the architecture, mathematics, the tools from the Indian knowledge system and the metallurgy. All the topics were covered. I felt that in psychology, whatever counseling or the theories are put forward in the counseling and the techniques which are being used, way long back it were used in Mahabharata. We usually quote that the Mahabharata is the first instance where Krishna gave the whole counseling session on the warfield. So that also can be included, I thought. So it was just my observations.
Yeah, you may have observed, I have only included things which I am reasonably comfortable or more than comfortable. I come from engineering, technology, science background, and maths also. I'm aware because I attended a long series of lectures by S.K. Ramchandra Rao, who has written the most authoritative book on counseling, and he was also the director of Nimans. But I don't have the reasonable grip of that to include that. This is a progression. I'm sure in another 1 year I will spend time to build a full semester course on what I have shared. Okay, but I'll definitely include that. I'm aware, but I don't think I am even marginally confident to include that. I'm working on that. There are other things I need to work on, and also there is lack of time. In fact, I wanted to spend some time on water management, which I think India has done the world's best water management so far, but not now anymore after the PWD Zilla Panchayat culture came. Okay, thank you. Any other question?
Sir, good evening. Sir, can you just cite or say some Indian knowledge system based references in the domain of political science?
Mostly it's Artha Shastra to begin with.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are many others. I'm not aware.
Yeah.
I'm not aware.